What would you do if your husband handed you a stack of legal papers, coldly stating he can no longer trust you? How did things spiral so far that the man you once loved now stands across from you, emotionless, with a lawyer's number in hand? This is the story of how refusing to choose between my husband and my best friend led to the moment my world was turned upside down. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning light filtered through our kitchen window as I mechanically buttered toast for the kids. Milo, our 7-year-old, sat quietly at the table, his usual chatter replaced by an uncomfortable silence that had become all too familiar in our house. 4-year-old Lily clung to my leg, her small fingers gripping my pajama pants like a lifeline. "Daddy's always grumpy now," she whispered, loud enough for Callum to hear from across the kitchen. My husband stood at the counter, his broad shoulders tense as he poured coffee into his travel mug. At 36, Callum still had the same strong jawline that had attracted me in college, but lately, it seemed permanently clenched. His dark hair was perfectly combed despite the early hour, his engineer's precision evident even in his morning routine. "I'm not grumpy, sweetheart," he said to Lily, his voice softening only for the children. "Daddy's just tired from work." I rolled my eyes, though I made sure he couldn't see it. Always work, always some excuse for why he couldn't be present in our marriage anymore. When was the last time he'd really looked at me? Really seen me as anything more than the woman who kept his house running and his children fed? "Maybe if you didn't stay at the office until 8 every night, you wouldn't be so exhausted," I said, my tone light but pointed. "The kids miss you. I miss you." Callum's hand paused on his mug handle. "The Morrison project deadline is next week, Arlena. You know this is temporary." "Everything's always temporary with you." I set down the butter knife harder than necessary. But somehow, temporary keeps stretching into months. "Can we not do this in front of the kids?" "Do what? Have a conversation. God forbid we actually communicate in this house." Milo's fork clattered against his plate. "Are you guys getting divorced like Tyler's parents?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Callum's face went pale, and I felt a stab of guilt that I quickly pushed away. This wasn't my fault. If he paid more attention to his family, instead of burying himself in blueprints and structural calculations, we wouldn't be having these problems. "No, baby," I said, smoothing Milo's brown hair. "Mommy and Daddy are just talking." "You're always just talking," Milo mumbled, poking at his eggs. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter. A text from Rowan. "Morning beautiful. Hope you're having a better day than yesterday. Coffee later." A smile tugged at my lips before I could stop it. At least someone cared about my day. At least someone wanted to spend time with me. "Who's texting you this early?" Callum asked, his green eyes narrowing slightly. "Just Rowan. We might grab coffee this afternoon." I slipped the phone into my robe pocket, but not before typing back. "Definitely. Need to escape this house." "You saw Rowan 3 times last week." "He's my best friend, Callum. We've been close since college. You used to like that about me, remember? That I was loyal to the people I cared about." "That was before." He stopped himself, glancing at the kids. "Before what?" "Nothing. Forget it." He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be late again tonight. The Morrison plans need revisions." "Of course they do." He paused at the doorway, his hand on the frame. For a moment, I thought he might say something meaningful, something that would bridge the growing distance between us. Instead, he just shook his head and walked out. The front door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than if he'd slammed it. "Is Daddy mad at you, Mommy?" Lily asked, climbing into my lap. "No, sweetie. Daddy's just busy." But even as I said it, I felt the familiar ache in my chest. When had we stopped being a team? When had I become just another item on his to-do list, squeezed between work meetings and project deadlines? My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "How are things with Callum? You sounded upset yesterday." I typed back quickly. Same as always. He's married to his job, not me. That man doesn't know how good he has it. You deserve better, honey. At least someone understood. At least someone saw how hard I was trying to keep this family together while my husband checked out emotionally. Mummy, can we call Uncle Rowan? Milo asked suddenly. He's funny. He makes you laugh. Maybe later, baby. It was true, though. Rowan did make me laugh. He listened when I talked. He remembered little things about my day and asked follow-up questions. He made me feel like I mattered, like I was more than just a mother and housekeeper and part-time office administrator. After I dropped the kids at school, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Rowan. There's my favorite voice, he answered on the second ring. His warm baritone sent a familiar flutter through my stomach. How's my girl this morning? Your girl is tired of being invisible in her own home. Callum being his usual charming self. He barely looked at me this morning, just grabbed his coffee and left like I was part of the furniture. I leaned back against the headrest, closing my eyes. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd said yes when you asked me out senior year. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Rowan had confessed just last month that he'd had feelings for me back in college, but had never acted on them because I'd started dating Callum. The revelation had stirred up feelings I'd thought were long buried. We can't change the past, Arlena, but we can control our present. What's that supposed to mean? It means you deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone who sees how amazing you are. My heart hammered against my ribs. Rowan, I know, you're married. You have kids. I respect that, but I also care about you, and I hate seeing you so miserable. I'm not miserable, I'm just lonely. You don't have to be. The words hung between us, loaded with possibility and danger. I thought about Callum's distant expression this morning, about the way he'd looked right through me like I wasn't even there. Coffee at 2? I asked finally. I'll be there. As I drove to work, I caught myself smiling in the rearview mirror. For the first time in months, I had something to look forward to. The weekend brought a group brunch at our usual spot, Miller's Cafe downtown. I'd spent extra time getting ready, choosing a blue sundress that brought out my eyes, and styling my blonde hair in loose waves. When Rowan's gaze lingered on me as I walked in, the effort felt worth it. Arlena. My friend Jessica waved from our usual corner table. You look gorgeous. Doesn't she look gorgeous, everyone? The compliment warmed me as I slid into the booth. Rowan was already there, looking effortlessly handsome in a black button-down that highlighted his athletic build. At 34, he'd maintained the lean physique from his college soccer days, and his dark eyes always seemed to find mine across any room. Stunning as always, he said, standing to give me a hug that lasted just a beat too long. Callum arrived 10 minutes later, apologizing for being delayed by a work call. He looked tired, his hair slightly mussed, still wearing the same polo shirt from yesterday. The contrast between him and Rowan was stark. Sorry, Callum said, squeezing into the booth beside me. The Morrison client had questions about the foundation specs. It's Sunday, Cal, said our friend Mike. Don't you ever take a break? Not when deadlines are breathing down my neck. I felt the familiar frustration bubble up. He's been saying that for 3 months now. I swear he loves those blueprints more than his own family. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Callum's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Well, I think it's admirable, Rowan said smoothly. A man who provides for his family. Though I have to say, if I had a wife like Arlena, I'd probably call in sick more often. He winked at me, and I felt my cheeks flush. Jessica and Mike exchanged glances. Rowan's always been a charmer, I said, laughing. Remember in college when he convinced Professor Mitchell to give us all extensions on that impossible sociology paper? By flirting with her, added Jessica. I prefer to call it using my natural charisma, Rowan grinned. Some of us are blessed with people skills. Another dig at Callum, though subtle enough that he couldn't call it out directly. My husband had always been more comfortable with numbers and structures, than social situations. Speaking of college, I continued, remember that time Rowan drove 6 hours to bring me soup when I had the flu? That's what I call friendship. 6 hours? Callum asked quietly. It was nothing, Rowan said. Arlena needed help, so I helped. That's what friends do. Real friends show up, I agreed, giving Callum a meaningful look. They don't cancel plans because of work emergencies every other week. Arlena, Callum's voice held a warning. What? I'm just saying Rowan understands the importance of being there for people. He makes time for what matters. Mike cleared his throat. So, how about those Lakers? But I wasn't done. The weeks of feeling invisible, of being treated like an afterthought, had built up inside me like pressure in a kettle. Last week, Rowan helped me fix the garbage disposal because my husband was too busy with his precious project to deal with a simple household repair. I offered to call a plumber, Callum said tightly. A plumber? For a garbage disposal. See what I mean? I turned to the table. Rowan had it fixed in 20 minutes. He actually knows how to use tools for things other than work. Rowan reached over and squeezed my hand. Hey, it's okay. We all have different strengths. But he didn't let go of my hand right away. His thumb traced across my knuckles, sending a shiver up my arm. Across the table, Jessica's eyebrows rose. Maybe we should order, she suggested. I'm starving. The rest of brunch passed in stilted conversation. Callum barely spoke, methodically eating his omelette while I chatted animatedly with Rowan about a new art exhibit downtown. We should go see it together, Rowan suggested. You always had great taste in art. I'd love that. Callum's not really into museums. I like museums, Callum said quietly. Since when? You fell asleep at the Van Gogh exhibit last year. I was tired from work. You're always tired from work. After we paid the check, everyone lingered outside the cafe for goodbyes. My sister Penny pulled me aside while the others chatted. Arlena, can I talk to you for a second? We walked a few steps away from the group. Penny, 29, and perpetually serious, had always been the responsible one between us. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her expression was troubled. What's going on with you and Rowan? What do you mean? Come on, the hand-holding, the googly eyes, the way you kept putting down Callum in front of everyone? I bristled. I wasn't putting him down. I was being honest about how neglected I feel in my marriage. By flirting with another man? Rowan and I are friends. We've been friends for over a decade. Just because you're jealous that I have someone who actually pays attention to me doesn't mean... Jealous? Penny's voice rose. Arlena, I'm worried about you. You're playing with fire here. You don't understand what it's like to be married to someone who treats you like a roommate. So talk to him about it. Go to counseling. Don't... Whatever this is nothing. Rowan is my friend. Friends don't look at each other the way you two were looking at each other in there. I glanced back at the group. Rowan was laughing at something Mike said, his head thrown back, completely at ease. Callum stood slightly apart, checking his phone. Maybe if my husband looked at me at all, I wouldn't need to seek validation elsewhere. Arlena, I have to go. The kids need lunch. I walked back to Callum, who was still absorbed in his phone screen. Work? I asked sarcastically. Client email. Of course. That evening, Jessica called while I was doing dishes. Hey, about brunch today. What about it? Mike posted some photos on Facebook. You might want to take a look. After we hung up, I opened Facebook on my phone. Mike had posted several shots from brunch. In most of them, I was leaning toward Rowan, laughing at something he'd said. In one particular photo, our heads were close together as he showed me something on his phone, and his hand rested on my shoulder. We looked intimate, like a couple. The comments were already rolling in. Cute couple. When did this happen? Wait, isn't Arlena married? Rowan looks happy. My stomach dropped. I quickly scrolled through the photos again. Callum appeared in only one shot, sitting slightly apart from the group, looking down at his phone. Even in a group setting, he seemed isolated. But Rowan and we looked like we belonged together. I was still staring at the photos when Callum came downstairs from putting the kids to bed. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. I quickly closed the app. "Fine, just tired." He nodded and headed for his home office. "I need to review some calculations for tomorrow's meeting. It's 8 o'clock on a Sunday night." "I know. I'll try not to be too long." And just like that, he disappeared behind his office door, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the echo of Rowan's laughter from this afternoon. My phone buzzed with a text from Rowan. "Had such a great time today. You looked beautiful. Sweet dreams." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "You too." But as I hit send, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the edge of a cliff, one step away from a fall I might not recover from. The following Thursday evening, I found myself standing outside Rowan's apartment building, holding a bottle of wine and trying to convince myself this was perfectly innocent. He'd invited me over to help him pick out furniture for his newly renovated living room. Just two friends spending time together, nothing more. Rowan's loft was on the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. It was stylish and sophisticated, the kind of place I'd dreamed of living in before marriage, and kids anchored me to suburban practicality. "This place is incredible," I said, setting the wine on his granite kitchen island. "Thanks. It's finally starting to feel like home." He opened the wine with practiced ease. "How was your day? You sounded stressed on the phone." I accepted the glass he offered, noting how our fingers brushed during the exchange. "Callum and I had another fight this morning. He forgot Milo's parent-teacher conference, again." "Ouch, that's rough." "I had to reschedule my work meetings to cover for him. Mrs. Peterson thinks I'm a single mother at this point." I took a sip of wine, feeling the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. I don't know why I keep expecting him to change. Rowan moved closer, his dark eyes full of sympathy. "You deserve better than that, Arlena. You deserve someone who makes you a priority." "Do I? Sometimes I wonder if this is just what marriage is. The slow death of romance, replaced by logistics and resentment. It doesn't have to be." We were standing very close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something warm and woodsy that made my pulse quicken. When had he moved so near? When had I let him? "Show me these furniture options," I said, trying to break the spell. He led me to the living room, where his laptop sat open on the coffee table. We settled onto his leather couch, and he pulled up various websites showing sofas and chairs. But I found it hard to concentrate on furniture when his thigh was pressed against mine, when his arm stretched along the back of the couch behind my shoulders. "This one's nice," I said, pointing at a random chair on the screen. "You're not even looking." He was right. I was looking at him, at the way the lamplight caught the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, at the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Arlena," he said softly, "I should go. I shouldn't be here." But I didn't move, couldn't move. It had been so long since someone looked at me like I was desirable, like I was worth pursuing. When was the last time Callum had looked at me with want instead of weary obligation? "You're unhappy," Rowan said, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. "I can see it in your eyes. You're dying a little more every day in that house." "I have children. I have responsibilities. You also have a right to be happy." His thumb traced along my cheekbone, and I felt myself leaning into the touch, despite every rational thought screaming at me to leave. "This is wrong," I whispered. "Is it? Or is staying in a loveless marriage wrong? Is sacrificing your happiness for someone who doesn't appreciate you wrong? Callum isn't a bad man. No, but he's the wrong man, for you anyway." Before I could respond, his lips were on mine. Soft at first, tentative, giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't pull away. Instead, I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. It felt like coming alive after years of sleepwalking. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and shaking. "I can't," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I meant them. "I'm not asking you to leave him tomorrow. I'm just asking you to admit that this," he gestured between us, "is real. What we have is real." I thought about going home to Callum's distracted kisses and perfunctory conversations. I thought about another evening of him disappearing into his office while I cleaned up after dinner alone. I thought about lying in bed next to someone who felt like a stranger. "It's real," I admitted. We talked until nearly midnight, sharing memories and dreams and all the intimate thoughts I'd stopped sharing with my husband years ago. Rowan listened to everything, asked questions, made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. When I finally left, he kissed me again at the door, longer this time, deeper. "I'll call you tomorrow," he promised. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling, my heart racing with a mixture of guilt and exhilaration. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Callum had left the porch light on for me, a small kindness that made my chest tighten with shame. He was already in bed when I crept upstairs, his breathing deep and even. I stood in the doorway watching him sleep, this man I'd promised to love and honor, and felt like I was looking at a stranger. In the bathroom, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My lips were slightly swollen, my hair mussed. I looked like a woman who'd been thoroughly kissed. I looked guilty. The next morning, Callum was already gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter said he had an early meeting and would pick up groceries on his way home. The mundane domesticity of it felt suffocating after the passion of the night before. My phone buzzed with a text from Rowan. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible." I smiled despite myself, typing back, "Me too." Another message came through immediately. "Have dinner with me Friday. Just us." I stared at the phone, knowing I should say no, knowing that dinner would lead to more kisses, more lines crossed, more betrayal of the vows I'd made 13 years ago. Instead, I typed, "Yes." When Callum came home that evening, he seemed different, more attentive. He asked about my day, helped with the kids' homework, even suggested we watch a movie together after they went to bed. "You seem happy," he observed as we settled on the couch. "Did something good happen today?" The irony wasn't lost on me. The first time in months my husband had noticed my mood, and it was because another man had made me feel alive again. "Just a good day, I guess." He reached for my hand, threading our fingers together. "I know I've been distracted lately. The Morrison project has been consuming, but it's almost done. Things will get better." "Will they?" "I want them to. I want us to get back to where we were." Looking at him, really looking, I could see the exhaustion in his green eyes, the stress lines that hadn't been there when we'd married. He was trying, in his own way. But was it too little? Too late? "I want that too," I said, and part of me meant it. But even as I curled up against his side to watch the movie, my phone buzzed with another message from Rowan, and my pulse quickened in a way it hadn't for my husband in years. I was in trouble. Deep, dangerous trouble. And I wasn't sure I wanted to find my way out. Sunday dinner at our house had always been a tradition, but lately it felt more like a performance. Both sets of parents gathered around our dining room table, making polite conversation while tension simmered beneath the surface like a pot about to boil over. My mother, Denise, held court at one end of the table, her perfectly styled grey hair and bright lipstick making her look younger than her 60 years. She'd been divorced twice and had strong opinions about marriage, most of which involved men needing to step up or step aside. "Arlena looks tired," she announced, as if I weren't sitting right there. "Are you getting enough help around the house, honey?" Callum's mother, Margaret, pursed her lips. At 62, she was the picture of quiet disapproval, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her blue eyes missing nothing. She'd never quite warmed to me, though she'd been civil for the sake of her son and grandchildren. "I help plenty," Callum said quietly, cutting his roast beef with more force than necessary. "Do you?" Denise's tone was saccharine. Because Arlena mentioned you've been working late every night for months. That's a lot of pressure on a wife and mother. The Morrison project, Callum began. There's always a project, I interrupted, feeling emboldened by my mother's support and the wine I'd been steadily consuming. Always some excuse for why work comes first. Callum's brother Ethan, 39 and recently divorced himself, looked up from his plate. Maybe because work pays for this house, the kids' school, the food we're eating. Nobody's saying Callum doesn't work hard, my sister Penny said diplomatically, but balance is important in a marriage. Balance, I laughed, the sound sharper than I intended. That's rich. You know what balance looks like? It looks like having friends who actually show up when you need them, friends who remember important things about your life. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. Friends? Rowan, Milo piped up helpfully. Uncle Rowan fixes stuff and makes Mommy laugh. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Lily, oblivious to the tension, continued colouring on her placemat. Rowan's been very helpful lately, I continued, my voice gaining strength. Last week, when the kitchen faucet started leaking, he came right over to fix it. Didn't even hesitate. I was in a client meeting, Callum said through gritted teeth. You're always in a client meeting. Thank God some people understand the importance of being there for their friends. Arlena, Penny's voice held a warning. But I was on a roll now, fueled by wine and weeks of resentment. You know what Rowan said to me the other day? He said I deserve someone who makes me a priority. Imagine that. Someone who thinks I'm worth prioritizing. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Margaret's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Ethan stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's an inappropriate thing for a friend to say to a married woman, Margaret said icily. Is it? Or is it inappropriate for a husband to make his wife feel invisible? Mommy, Lily tugged at my sleeve. Why is everyone mad? Nobody's mad, sweetheart, I said, smoothing her hair. Grown-ups are just talking. Sounds like yelling, Milo muttered. Denise jumped to my defense. Arlena has every right to have friends who appreciate her. If her husband can't see what a treasure he has, maybe he needs a wake-up call. Mother, Penny said sharply. What? I'm tired of watching my daughter wither away in a marriage where she's taken for granted. Rowan sees her value. He treats her like she matters. Rowan isn't her husband, Ethan said, his voice dangerous. And he has no business telling another man's wife what she deserves. Maybe if her husband told her what she deserved, other people wouldn't have to, Denise shot back. Callum's face had gone pale, then red. His hands were clenched so tightly around his knife and fork that his knuckles were white. You know what the best part is? I continued, past the point of caring about the damage I was causing. I don't have to choose between them. Rowan understands that I have a family, responsibilities. He's not asking me to pick sides. He just wants me to be happy. How generous of him, Margaret said dryly. It is generous, it's mature. It's what real friendship looks like, supporting someone without demanding they sacrifice everything else. Callum stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Excuse me. Where are you going? I demanded. Upstairs. I need some air. Of course you do. Run away like you always do when things get uncomfortable. He paused at the doorway, his back rigid. I'm removing myself from this conversation before I say something I'll regret. God forbid you actually say what you're thinking for once. But he was already gone, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. A moment later, we heard his office door slam shut. Well, Denise said, refilling her wine glass, that was mature. He's under a lot of pressure, Margaret said quietly, but her tone suggested she was making excuses out of habit rather than conviction. We're all under pressure, I snapped. The difference is, some of us don't use it as an excuse to check out of our families. Ethan threw his napkin down on his plate. Are you listening to yourself right now? You're sitting here, in front of your children, and both families, talking about another man like he's your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend. He's my friend. Friends don't talk about what you deserve from your marriage. Friends don't insert themselves into relationships. Friends don't. Don't what? I challenged. Ethan glanced meaningfully at the children, then back at me. Don't cross lines. The only line being crossed here is my husband's complete disrespect for his family. Arlena, Penny said quietly, maybe we should change the subject. Why? Because the truth makes everyone uncomfortable. Because nobody wants to admit that Callum has checked out of this marriage. Because you're embarrassing yourself, Ethan said bluntly. The words hit like a slap. I felt my face flush hot, my hands trembling with anger and humiliation. I'm embarrassing myself by having a friend who cares about me. By talking about him like he's your husband, while your actual husband sits upstairs, wondering what the hell happened to his wife. Margaret stood, beginning to clear plates with sharp, efficient movements. Children, why don't you go play in the living room while the adults finish talking? Milo and Lily scrambled down from their chairs, clearly eager to escape the tension. I watched them go, a part of me recognizing that they shouldn't be witnessing this, but too angry to care. You all act like I'm some kind of villain for having a friend, I said, my voice rising. But none of you seem to care that I've been lonely and neglected for months. Then talk to your husband, Penny pleaded. Go to counseling. Work on your marriage. Don't. This. This what? Whatever you're doing with Rowan. I'm not doing anything with Rowan except being his friend. But even as I said it, I could feel Rowan's lips on mine, could remember the way his hands had felt in my hair, the way he'd looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Upstairs, Callum's office door remained firmly shut, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I wondered if I'd finally pushed him too far. Monday morning brought a cold silence that felt different from our usual distance. Callum moved through his morning routine like a ghost, making coffee, checking his phone, gathering his work materials without saying a word to me or the children. Daddy? Lily approached him cautiously as he stood by the door, briefcase in hand. Are you still mad? His expression softened instantly as he crouched down to her level. I'm not mad at you, Princess. Never at you or Milo. But you're mad at Mommy. Callum's eyes met mine across the kitchen, and I saw something there I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, but something colder, something final. Daddy's just thinking about some important things, he told Lily, kissing her forehead. I'll see you tonight, okay? After he left, I tried to push down the uneasiness that had settled in my stomach like a stone. So what if he was upset? He'd get over it. He always did. Callum wasn't the type to make dramatic gestures or issue ultimatums. He'd sulk for a few days, then everything would go back to normal. My phone buzzed with a text from Rowan. How are you feeling after yesterday? You seemed upset when you called. I'd called him after everyone left Sunday night, needing someone to validate my feelings, to tell me I wasn't crazy for wanting more from my marriage. Better now, I typed back. Thanks for listening. Always. Dinner tonight. You sound like you could use some cheering up. I hesitated. After yesterday's disaster, maybe I should stay home, try to smooth things over with Callum. But then I thought about his cold silence this morning, the way he'd looked through me like I wasn't even there. Yes, I need to get out of this house. The day passed slowly at the office. I worked as an administrator for a small marketing firm, handling schedules and correspondence for 3 account managers. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was mine, and I was good at it. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang. Callum's name appeared on the screen. Hello? We need to talk. His voice was calm, measured. Tonight, after the kids go to bed. I can't tonight, I have plans. A pause. What kind of plans? Dinner with Rowan. I told you I needed to get out more, have adult conversations. Cancel it. The command in his voice surprised me. Callum wasn't usually so direct. Excuse me? Cancel it, Arlena. We need to discuss what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday was me finally being honest about how I feel in this marriage. If you can't handle that. What I can't handle is my wife publicly humiliating me in front of our families while praising another man. I wasn't praising. You were, and it stops now. Now I was angry. Who was he to give me orders after months of neglect? It stops. You don't get to dictate who I spend time with, Callum. Rowan is my friend. Rowan is a problem, and if you can't see that, then we have bigger issues than I thought. The only problem here is your jealousy and insecurity. Another pause, longer this time. I'm asking you as your husband to limit your contact with him, for the sake of our marriage. And I'm telling you as your wife that I won't be controlled. I'm not giving up my friendship because you're threatened by it. Threatened? His laugh was bitter. Arlena, I'm trying to save our marriage. By isolating me from my friends? That's not saving anything, that's control. One friend, I'm asking you to step back from one friend who clearly has feelings for you. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife is having an emotional affair. The words hung in the air between us. An affair? Is that what this was? That's ridiculous. Rowan and I are friends. Just because you don't understand how to be emotionally available doesn't mean friendship is an affair. Friendship doesn't involve discussing what you deserve from your marriage with someone who isn't your spouse. Maybe if my spouse actually talked to me, I wouldn't need to find emotional support elsewhere. So this is my fault. This is nobody's fault. This is me having a friend who cares about my well-being. A friend who's in love with you. You don't know what you're talking about. But even as I said it, I remembered Rowan's confession about his college feelings, the way he looked at me, the kiss we'd shared. I know more than you think, Callum said quietly. I'm asking you one more time. Please, for our marriage, for our children, step back from this friendship. And I'm telling you one more time, no. I won't be isolated and controlled. If you can't trust me to have friends, then maybe the problem isn't my friendship. Maybe the problem is our marriage. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Callum, I'll be late tonight, don't wait up. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking slightly. Had I just crossed a line I couldn't uncross? Had I chosen Rowan over my marriage? But no, that wasn't what this was about. This was about my right to have friendships, to not be controlled and isolated. Callum was being unreasonable, jealous without cause. I called Rowan back. Hey, beautiful, ready for tonight? More than ready, I need to get away from all this drama. Everything okay? Callum's being controlling, trying to dictate who I can and can't spend time with. That's not okay, Arlena. You're not his property. Exactly. Thank you for understanding. Sometimes I feel like you're the only person who gets me. Because I see you for who you really are, not who someone else wants you to be. That evening, I told my mother-in-law that I was going out and asked if she could watch the kids. Margaret's expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the disapproval in her eyes. Will you be late? She asked. I'm not sure. Don't wait up. As I drove to meet Rowan, I caught myself checking my phone repeatedly, waiting for a text from Callum. An apology, maybe, or at least acknowledgement that he was being unreasonable. But no messages came. Dinner with Rowan was exactly what I needed. He listened to my frustrations, validated my feelings, made me laugh until my sides hurt. When he reached across the table to take my hand, I didn't pull away. You deserve so much better than this, he said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Do I? You deserve someone who sees your worth, someone who prioritizes you. It's complicated. The kids, the house, 13 years of history. I know, I'm not asking you to blow up your life. I'm just saying you deserve to be happy. When he walked me to my car, he kissed me goodnight. Longer this time, with more heat. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. I should go, I whispered against his lips. Should and want are two different things. He was right. I should go home to my husband and children. but I wanted to stay here in Rowan's arms, feeling desired and valued and alive. Soon, I promised, though I wasn't sure what I was promising. I drove home in a haze of guilt and exhilaration, my lips still tingling from his kiss. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Margaret's car was gone. She must have left after putting the kids to bed. Inside, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Children fed and bathed. Callum called to say he'd be very late. Margaret, I crept upstairs to check on Milo and Lily, both sleeping peacefully in their beds. Then I went to my own room, expecting to find it empty. But Callum was there, sitting on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed. His laptop was open beside him, and there was a manila folder on the nightstand I'd never seen before. "How was dinner?" he asked without looking up. "Fine." "Good. We need to talk." Something in his tone made my stomach clench. "It's late, Callum. Can't this wait until tomorrow?" "No, it can't." He closed the laptop and turned to face me fully. In the lamplight, I could see the exhaustion in his face, but also something else. A resolution that hadn't been there this morning. "Sit down, Arlena." I remained standing, suddenly afraid of what was coming. "I made a decision today," he said quietly, "about us, about our marriage." My heart started hammering against my ribs. "What kind of decision?" He reached for the manila folder, and I noticed his hands were perfectly steady. The kind that's going to change everything. Callum opened the folder, the way he opens everything. Calmly, precisely, like he's about to show me why a bridge will or will not collapse. Inside were 3 months of my life printed out in high resolution. Phone records, texts highlighted in yellow. "I wish things were different. You make me feel alive again." Photos from the brunch where Rowan's arm was around me, and 17 strangers asked if we were the new couple. A notebook in his neat engineer handwriting, dates, times, excuses I'd used, the exact minute I came home with someone else's cologne on my skin. He didn't raise his voice once. He just laid the evidence on the table like a load calculation and said, "I'm filing tomorrow. Primary custody. You kept telling me you didn't have to choose. I'm choosing for you." I begged. Offered counseling, transparency, anything. He looked at me the way you look at a building that's already failed inspection. "I loved you enough to come home every night," he said. "You loved the way he made you feel more than you loved coming home to us. That's the whole equation." Then he zipped the suitcase he'd already packed while I was putting the kids to bed. The next morning, Margaret was in my kitchen making pancakes because Callum had called her to stay with the children, to protect them from their own mother. Lily asked if Daddy was moving out like Tyler's daddy. Milo, 7 years old, looked straight at me and said, "Because Mommy wants to be with Uncle Rowan now." Callum didn't answer for me. He just knelt down, hugged them both and said, "Sometimes grown-ups break things they can't fix." He handed me his lawyer's card on his way out. I still have it. It's in the same drawer as the last family photo where all 4 of us are smiling. Rowan texted that night, "Everything okay?" I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I turned the phone face down and haven't answered him since. I lost my husband, my home, and the daily right to tuck my children in because I wanted to feel 25 again for 5 minutes at a time. Turns out the cost of refusing to choose is that someone else chooses for you, and they always choose the kids.